In less than an hour, NASA's 300 million mile journey from America's shore to Jezero Crater on Mars will begin with the launch of this Atlas V rocket into space. And at the top of that rocket, with a beautiful sunrise and shrouded by that protective fairing, is the Perseverance rover headed to Mars, ready to ride a column of fire and smoke on its way to the red planet. What a beautiful morning here on the Space Coast. So far, the countdown to Mars is on track. We've got great weather, the rocket's looking good, and it puts us on track for a launch at 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, the beginning of a 2-hour window.
We want to give you a preview of what's ahead today in the countdown. Things really got going this morning just after midnight, actually, and Atlas V is just about ready to fly. In a few more minutes, we're going to get the final check of the weather, and that weather report should be coming back really positive. It's been great all morning. We have the terminal count ahead after that. We will be proceeding through the last few minutes of the countdown, and then the drama will be at its peak at launch when the clock strikes 0, the engines ignite, and the spacecraft and rocket take flight. After successfully passing through max Q just shy of 2 minutes into flight, the solid rocket boosters will be expended and will be jettisoned. Nearly 2 more minutes, and the payload fairing, which you might call the nose cone of the rocket, that has been protecting Perseverance, will no longer be needed. It will split in 2 halves and fall away from the accelerating vehicle. 1 minute later, the Atlas booster will have finished its task of lifting Perseverance above Earth's atmosphere and being on the way to orbit. It too will separate, exposing the Centaur RL-10 upper stage engine that will almost immediately begin its first burn that lasts approximately 7 minutes. After coasting for more than 30 minutes, the second burn, lasting around 8 minutes, will take Perseverance out of Earth orbit and into solar orbit on its way to Mars. That sets up spacecraft separation and the final milestone we're hoping to hear this morning, the acquisition of signal. And I say hoping to intentionally because it's quite possible that Perseverance will be in perfect condition, but we won't make contact during the broadcast. So lots more to come, lots ahead, but Daryl, we're going to throw it back over to you now to tell us more about this amazing mission.
You should be looking at a visible satellite image. We have now mostly clear skies, a few clouds off to the east over the water. We were monitoring one cell on the radar 10 miles to our southeast, which has dissipated, so things are looking great for launch. We are go on all LCCs and expected to remain go through the count. Our temperature is currently 80 degrees, could climb to 82 by the end of the window. Winds are currently from 220, 8 knots sustained with peaks to 10 knots, 10% POV for the cumulus cloud rule. Proton flux is at normal background levels and expected to remain so through the count. This concludes the weather brief unless there are any questions.
This is the NLM on the NLM net. Currently working, no issues on the range or the launch vehicle. Weather is green, 10% chance of violation, and winds aloft look good for the entire window. The spacecraft did experience some earthquake activity at their control center in Pasadena, but appears to be ready to proceed. And with that, I would like to poll the team for final launch poll and spacecraft configuration. NASA CE.
NASA CE is go.
SMA.
SMA is go.
SMD.
SMD is go.
NASA Mission Manager.
NASA Mission Manager is go.
LSP.
LSP is go.
Copy. NASA team is ready to proceed.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Launch director.
LD is go, and you have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verify T0 is set for 1150 Zulu.
So 11:50 Zulu. That is 7:50 a.m. Eastern time, so that time is correct.
As I'm watching Josh do the calculations on his finger there.
Get my abacus out.
Right.
No, so there's a lot to come ahead. One of the things coming up in just a few seconds.
5 minutes, 30 seconds.
LSC, NSC.
Go, NSC.
Spacecraft on internal power and timer set for T0 of 1150 Zulu.
Roger. OS, start list data capture.
Roger.
Fantastic.
All steps are complete prior to terminal count. LC switch is ready.
3, 2, 1, mark.
Awesome. So this is now the terminal countdown. This is that time when things become more and more automated over the next couple minutes, few minutes, and the energy's building, but the focus is increasing exponentially.
1 minute 59.
Vehicle internal.
1 minute 55.
Launch sequencer start.
1 minute 50.
Securing Centaur LH2.
Securing Centaur LO2.
So there we heard the fueling is
1
wrapping
minute
up there.
40.
Yep, fueling is wrapping
Launch
up.
enabled.
Team is gone. Launch enable's
137.
done. Launch conductor sequence is ready to go. They're getting ready to turn the vehicle over to auto
FPS
sequence at T-minus 31 seconds. So that's a big thing that they're getting done here. At T-minus 25 seconds, we will hear the team give their final goes that everything is ready and
1
the
minute
launch
20.
vehicle is ready to lift off and
OCU
perform
arm.
this mission.
SCS count started.
1 minute 15.
Produce ECS for launch.
Roger.
1 minute 10.
Vent valves locked.
One minute.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
That's good to hear, Joshua, right
That means
there.
public safety there is accounted for. The FTS system, there you see on your screen, a beautiful shot. The skies look great. There is little wind happening. You'd be able to see more of the venting. If there were wind, the trail of that venting. So we're ready to go.
And actually, that's an
40
important
seconds.
point. The reason we don't see that
Stable at
venting is
step
the
3.
vent valves have been locked up to put flight pressure into the tanks. And as we just heard, they're stable at step 3, which means the tanks are ready to go. And here at about 5 seconds, we will
28
hear
seconds.
the team
ECS reduced for launch.
give their
Roger.
final go.
25 seconds.
Status check.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go Mars 2020.
There we go. We are ready to go lift off this morning, Joshua.
Eight, 7, 6, 5,
5.
4. Engine ignition. 2, 1, 0.
Release.
And liftoff. As the countdown to Mars continues, the perseverance of humanity launching the next generation of robotic explorers to the Red Planet.
And Atlas TU has gone to closed loop control. Coming up on 30 seconds into flight, the RD-180 is throttling down as expected. Engine response looks good. And Mach 1, Atlas 5 is now supersonic. And passing 45 seconds into flight, vehicle is now passing through max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. And passing 1 minute into flight, the RD-180 is throttling back up as expected. Engine response looks good. At this time in flight, the SRB chamber pressures remain nominal. The RD-180 pump speed and fuel injector pressures are responding well to demands on the engine. Standing by for SRB burnout shortly. And we have burnout on all 4 SRBs. Burnout pressure signatures look good. Standing by for SRB jettison shortly. And we have a good indication of SRB jettison of all 4 SRBs. And the vehicle has gone to closed loop guidance. Vehicle body rates are responding nominally at this time. And coming up on 2.5 minutes into flight, the RD-180 is throttled down slightly as expected. Engine response continues to look good. At this time, the vehicle is 50 miles in altitude, 85 miles downrange, traveling at 6,000 miles per hour. And the Centaur reaction control system is now pressurizing to flight levels. And just past 3 minutes into flight, the RD-180 is now throttling to maintain a constant 2.5 G acceleration limit for payload fairing jettison. Engine response and vehicle acceleration look good. And we have good indication of payload fairing jettison and Centaur forward load reactor deck jettison. And the RD-180 is throttling back up to attain a 4.6 G acceleration. Engine response continues to look good. And Centaur has begun the boost phase chill down sequence to thermally condition the RL-10 for operation. Standing by for BECO shortly.
BECO's the call for booster engine.
And we have BECO, booster engine cutoff, standing by for stage separation. And we have good indication of Atlas Centaur separation.
So there you're seeing live footage.
And we have
the
MES
rocket.
1. RL-10 operating parameters look good. Chamber pressures are stable. This will be the first of 2 burns for today's mission. This first burn will be approximately 7 minutes in length.
So Mick, that's pretty exceptional footage there. That's live video. We will see that switch over shortly into an animation that kind of helps let us know what's happening with the rocket. But right there, a beautiful liftoff. Fun to feel that rumble in the building here as we proceed towards orbit and then towards Mars destination.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great watching an on-time liftoff of the Atlas V with that little over 2 million pounds of thrust. Cleared the tower in roughly 5 seconds. Josh, you and I worked the InSight mission, and if you recall, that mission on the West Coast took about 17 seconds to get past tower. So with those 4 solids today, this thing really got out of here and on its way. And it's, as we hear from Jesse, everything's looking nominal, and all vehicle parameters are within the design limits, and we're getting ready to come up on a main engine start for that first burn that Jesse was talking about.
Yeah, so recapping this countdown to Mars, the stations begin to be filled up this morning just after midnight. Preparations, fuelings, powering up, all the way through that liftoff that happened. I think, Mick, it wasn't precisely on time. I think you said it was like 10 milliseconds early. So it's pretty much dead on.
Yeah, dead on. This team does a great job. As I said, they're very focused, very disciplined. As Tori also said, courageous. They have done a lot of work to get us to this point today through this pandemic, changed how they did some of their work, made adjustments as needed, a lot of cleaning, a lot of things, a lot of wearing their face masks, doing all kinds of things. And so this is an exciting time, not only for the JPL team in Mars 2020, but everybody that's worked this mission, and for the country and the agency. So this is exciting to see. We still have a long way to go, Joshua, before spacecraft separation.
Yeah, we had a really quiet countdown today, which is phenomenal, that we got off the ground on time. And we are proceeding now that we are in the middle of the first burn. It's tough to make out, but that engine is lit and it's firing. So we are in motion. There you go. There's that animation we talked about.
The telemetry there as we switch to a TDRS compatible data format.
TDRS.
Overall telemetry quality is very good.
The space tracking system. So there you go. This is not an actual video, but this is an animation that's driven by real data. So although we're not actually seeing the engine on screen right now, we can see that the engine is lit, and that is driven by the data that says that the engine is truly lit and we're in this burn. Yeah,
the launch vehicle continues to send telemetry to the launch team via the TDRS network, as you mentioned, and that allows them to continue to watch what's going on and make sure all their sequence of events meet their timeline. we continue on a nominal flight this morning. This first burn, as we heard earlier, will be about 6 minutes. This will get us into that park orbit around Earth, allow us to get on our way, and then get into that approximately 30-minute coast period that we're going to have.
8 minutes into flight, beginning to see the Centaur PU system balance out mass errors, seeing very stable body rates in the Centaur.
So we've mentioned 5 teams at play, and although if you were watching, hopefully you got a chance to see this in person, if not on camera, it's easy to kind of say, oh, it's over, like job done, but all 5 of these teams still very much engaged, still very much focused, because there's a lot of work ahead as we proceed through this first burn, and then a coast phase, like you mentioned, Mick, and then a second burn, and then spacecraft separation and the acquisition of signal from Mars 2020. So a lot more coming up here. Mick, I know for a launch services program, you guys manage the launch. So what does that mean? I mean, this is you guys' work in action right now.
By the way, that's the 5th team that we didn't get to mention. We talked about JPL, we talked about DOE, we talked about United States Space Force, and United Launch Alliance. LSP, we are like the brokers to select this launch vehicle and help with manage this mission. So we get our spacecraft customer, the JPL folks, they come to us. They have some certain requirements that they need for this mission. The launch services program made up of engineers and flight analysis folks, and they look at everything, they help define those requirements, and then we go out and procure a vehicle from a commercial partner. In this case, it was the Atlas 541 for the Mars 2020 mission that was needed for performance, right? As you and I have talked over the last several days, Josh, one of the things that was important for us to look at was that performance, to be able to get Mars 2020 onto that transfer orbit into solar orbit to intercept Mars in 7 months. It's kind of analogous to a football game, right? With a quarterback trying to throw a pass downfield. You need a quarterback with a lot of performance who can get that ball down there where it needs to be, so the receiver can intercept that. In our case, 7 months later.
There you go. Yeah, it's the longest football pass ever. The Earth is the quarterback. The Atlas is the quarterback's arm. Perseverance is the football, and Mars is the receiver.
That's exactly right.
And what we also talked about is that technically, you could launch to Mars at any time if you had a rocket that was powerful enough. But this is the launch period every 26 months or so, as we've talked about, that makes the most sense because you require the least amount of energy to get to Mars, because it takes a lot to get there. Obviously, like the Atlas 541 is a workhorse.
Yeah, as Tori said, it's their Dominator. Right?
There you go.
I love that name for the Atlas 541. But we heard Jim Bridenstine, our NASA administrator, tell us that if we didn't make this launch period, we would be down for roughly 26 months,
it's
right?
Tough.
So the period started July 17th and goes to August 15th. Today, July 30th, was one of those launch opportunities that we had. We had a 2-hour window, and within that window, we had several opportunities.
25, actually.
Yeah.
25 opportunities.
And we launched at the beginning of the window on our first opportunity to get Mars 2020 going on its way. And that, that sounds like a lot, and it is. The flight analysis group, both at JPL, LSP, and ULA, did a lot of work to pick out those target sets and figure out where we needed to be. So they've done a great job, and we'll see how this mission continues.
So, Mick, tell us about the 2 burns required here, and we're actually coming up on the end of the first one. Ultimately, a lot of people probably, and myself included at some point, just like, why wouldn't you just keep firing the engines? Just fire all the way through and get to Mars in one shot.
So the first burn gets us into that park orbit we talked about. We've lifted off, we've left Earth, we've got into a park orbit around Earth right now. And while we're in that park orbit, we will perform some maneuvers to kind of roll Mars Perseverance and the Centaur and coast during that time, basically setting itself up looking at the sun and away from the sun to control the thermal environments that are on Mars 2020 during this coast period. That coast period will allow us to coast around into the position that we need so that we can have that second firing to get the velocity needed to head off into Mars.
Yes, and we will be back for that second burn in just under 30 minutes now. We have a fuel pre-start call just coming in. We are getting ready to hear the call for this second burn of that Centaur RL-10 engine. Again, Mick, explain what this second burn is for.
So as we talked earlier, the second burn is really to get us that velocity as we head into that transfer orbit, right? Centaur and Mars 2020 will head into that solar orbit on its way with the proper velocity. We will then get ready to separate Mars 2020 on its way. And I'm hearing that settling is done and
we have main engine
start.
There we go. Awesome. And again, that animation there being driven by actual telemetry data coming from that rocket. So that's a phenomenal sign. Again, I think that it's tough with these images. Perspective and scale are so important. This vehicle is in Earth orbit. It's not near anything, so you can't see the acceleration of what's happening right now. But for 8 minutes, it's going to be picking up speed.
Yeah, this is the burn that gets us really moving in the direction we need to go, that fast velocity that we need to get out of our park orbit and head on our way to Mars. Of course, Centaur and Mars 2020 are still together.
System is in closed loop control.
As we're hearing, everything is looking nominal on this fire so far. Main engine start was good, and the firing is going well, nominal, as we see in the animation there.
You should be seeing that engine cut off, and that's completely expected. That's a nominal operation, as you say,
nominal operation. We'll hear from Jesse Gonzalez, who's looking at the launch vehicle telemetry and watching the animation there. So let's listen in for Jesse here.
And there's the call, and there's the animation, again, modified based on data. So
shutdown parameters.
Let's talk about communication for a minute, Mick, because it is not an automatic thing to just shoot information at Earth and have that be usable. So how do we go about communicating not only through launch, but on the way to Mars, and then once we're at Mars?
Yeah, so the important thing this morning is when we lifted off from Complex 41 here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, we had ground stations that were looking at the launch vehicle and tracked it all the way to provide data. Once we got onto orbit after stage separation, you heard a call out for TDRS, the telemetry network that NASA owns, which, by the way, is also used for the ISS and will be used hopefully for the landing with Doug and them.
Yes.
So getting off the ground today was great because we could deconflict some of that TDRS usage, right? We heard Jesse telling us that Centaur is spinning up. This is the maneuver right prior to spacecraft separation, where we get into a slight roll to give Mars 2020 some
stable Centaur tank pressures,
stability.
Very good performance from the RCS system, and stable indications from the avionics systems as well.
So RCS there, the reaction control system, that's those small, the series of those small engines that you see firing around the spacecraft. Those are used for that in-flight operations that they need. The rolling activities, as Mick's saying, is basically providing stability to the flight of Mars 2020 as we go forward. Tell us about actually...
And we have successful separation of Mars 2020 with the Perseverance rover.
There we go.
Awesome. We got some nice applause there. That is a big moment. We are hoping to get some live video back from that because of the time delays with communicating with things in space. We don't have it at this instant. We're hoping we'll get to see that here in a few minutes.
Right now, we are just a minute away from the acquisition of signal, so let's pause for a moment and watch our teams at work.
Copy that. Radio science.
Flight nav. Go ahead, nav. We're seeing one-way downpoint.
3436 US.
Didn't copy, nav.
Yes, sir. We see AOS at 131531.
Ace copies. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to, ideally, a very quiet and boring cruise to Mars as we prepare for the never boring and always stressful entry, descent, landing on the 18th of February.
Thank you so much, Adam, and we hope you tune into our coverage of the landing happening on February 18th, 2021.
在这个必须保持社交距离的时候，我们可以一起做一件事，完成2020年人口普查。你的回复对于医疗保健、公共设施和教育在未来10年的规划非常重要。现在上2020 census.gov。花几分钟时间便可以带来改变。为了你的社区和开展美国的未来，即刻上2020 census.gov/languages 回复人口普查。